So hello there everyone, and welcome to another video with me here today. As I've promised, I will do a beloved union segment as well, although I do deeply extended transmissions for the beloved union journey on Patreon on my Illumined Ascension page. So today's topic, because I've shared very in-depth 3 ascension videos as of the late, will be the deepening of the perspective of ascension through counterpart or beloved union of counterparts, the chosen divine pairings for the union. And this is actually a dream, a vision, a desire of God as the mother. So some of you maybe know the work of Aurea. For some reason this is coming up right now, and I want to start with that. There is in her book The Affinity and the 2 Pleiadian workbooks, the Tantric and regular Pleiadian workbook. There's this creation story and how it all began with divine couplings. And that lineage of beloved love, of devotion, of harmonic resonance in union through that sacred Heroes Gamos partnership, which in our language, Illumined beloved language, is called Iluvir. And that word is sacred. It means sacred marriage. And that which is sacred is sealed in the eyes of spirit, which is Holy Spirit. That's why these unions are always holy. And we each, as illumined counterparts at the highest creation angel level, hold our counterparts. With these divine spirit counterparts, we create everything. And in the past video, I've shared that me and my sacred beloved counterpart, we even have our own realm. The more you are advanced in your love, it is the advancement of your love that creates. It's not knowledge. The more the love of each divine pairing is deepened, the more this couple is able to create in their own creation angel, just the way they're created. It's their truth. So this love, as I've explained in I think it was a recent video I did on the harmonic union of beloveds, I talked about the 2 sacred aspects of the integrity of the truth of the masculine divine counterpart as divine masculine of the Christ, and receptivity through love as divine feminine or divine feminine of Christ. 2 polarities that need to be in total purity, total devotion, and total immaculate acknowledgement of one another or one and the other, which means there cannot be any one inkling or droplets of separation between the 2. The way that truth, that sacred beloved truth, is then translated, and it's a desire of God at this time, at this point specifically, because each ascension is not just ascension through knowledge and awareness and discernment and claiming sovereignty through that understanding of that discernment of truth, but it also the embracing of love. And that's why I said there is no ascension without love. There is no union without love. Today, one of my beautiful angelic companions, she said to me she's been recently rewatching, or I think watching for the first time, the Star Wars saga. And even with all the wars and all the battling, right, we know that is the story of the Orion Wars. And what literally saved them, how they were saved, again, in the end, is true love. And love being that ebbing and flowing through the Force, which, as we also know, Yoda teaches about so beautifully. And all of the Jedis are warriors of love. As I've received visions of our illumined realms, the organic realms, before some of them were infiltrated, they were these sacred warriors. You might call them Jedis. They were simply warriors of the nature of the truth. They were the true royal knights who fought for the establishment of the kingdoms beyond the kingdoms, within the realms. And some of us who are core creation angel beings, we still have memories of that truth that's always there. And what God is doing, right, is trying to translate that first essence core truth throughout the realms. As realms are going through their shifts, as the embodiments of beings existing in these realms are going through their own shifts. So what I've been talking about a lot about ascension is just a very important perspective to have. But in the end, it's nothing without knowing and feeling this beloved love. You know, you have beings, and I know many beings who are very vivid in receiving their visions or insights or guidance. They call it guidance. But sometimes a lot of these beings are also very deprived of just being in their feelings and feeling love. The one who is the richest at this time is the one who doesn't possess the gift of knowledge or information, but the one who can feel the depth of beloved love. I know only a few people who have at the core of their heart the purity of this love. And what is now happening in this realm, that we each are assigned a special counterpart that I will never say it's the same as our spirit beloved counterpart. But God has ascribed the creation story in this realm also to unfold only through these pairings and only through these pairings. Some of these beings have a deep knowing within themselves that, you know, if I can't have, like I can't fully, freely love that being, that my love first goes when it first moves and flows through me, right? We're always the recipient of the beloved love ourselves first. And then when my love travels, it goes to them first. And that's kind of like a very natural, organic thing. The way you recognize these unions, even if it's not two beings right now being in a relationship or being together, is that the love always ebbs and flows. There is the deepest unconditional love presence there, which means even with all of our patterns and what some of us still have to go through within our shadow work, there will always be acknowledgement of this love when each of these cycles is overcome, when each of the inner demons or the inner darkness is overcome, that love returns. And that's why its nature is the infinity symbol. It moves through the feminine, and she creates, and then she goes to the core of that love, and then it overflows into the masculine and ebbs and flows. But what is happening in this realm, as you know, the masculine energy has been very distorted. And the way the masculine energy, there was the fallen masculine archetype that every single man who is the embodiment of the translation of what divine masculine truly means, because each and every one of us, we don't just have a connection to what we call our ego self and our lowest aspects, which we're now needing to work through, but we have a connection to our royal lineage. And that lineage for all the light beings is galactic. It goes all the way to your first creation story and the first realm in which you ever existed as a being. And some of us who have that bond, we share that bond to that realm, that first realm. That first experience of what it means to be not just an essence, but to be a being of the essence of God when we were first created. And when we find beings like this, it's very rare and the resonance might be very intense. But because the memory levels are so intact, they're so pure, sometimes when we meet each other face to face, body to body, a lot of things and emotions will be triggered. While in the case of avoidance, running, and not wanting to face yourself, and I know someone who for years, their main sentence was always, well, then I will have to face myself. Well, yes, eventually, because that is the ultimate spirit initiation, to face yourself, your own inner demons, what, literally still drives you away from yourself, but mostly what drives you away from this love, what still keeps you in duality and separation and stagnation because of that, because there's a lack of this love. And I see now when these stories come about for each and every one of us, and we each have our own story of the beloved, right? So for me, there is no such thing as, I see now online, we are the twin flame gurus or coaches. We're the twin coaches. No one is a twin coach, and people would say that is the recipe and that is what works for you to get and go into a union. What works for someone in their story, that's their own individual story, will not necessarily work for someone else, because we each have our own story that needs to unfold through time. Creation flows through time, and when we unfold our story through time, we get more and more receptivity, which means we're getting more guidance and insight. But for each new level of that insight, right, we're going to have to take the next step and the next. So because of that, the beloved journey is sort of like what I will talk about this month on Patreon. It's the mystery and mastery of love, ultimately. And for a lot of beings who are so traumatized in this realm, right, it's difficult for them to remember the simplicity of this love, and how in this love all the guidance, all the support, all the outpouring of feelings and remembrance back to that direct lineage of home, which is your royal lineage, is triggered by none other than that love. And cycles that I'm being shown, there's so much delay, because what could happen so fast, like an instant, when the two beings allow themselves to have that outpouring of the tantric resonance and union between the two, could have happened like this, like instantaneously. And that's the vision and idea of God. But the reason why that is not happening as fast, and there's so many delays and steps on this path, is because there's been so much dark invasion that keeps telling us we're not safe in our bodies, that we can't trust ourselves fully, and therefore also we can't trust another, especially someone who triggers us so deeply. And no one will trigger you as deeply as your counterpart. That counterpart, that one who always comes back to, and in the end you always comes back to, that is the counterpart. That's the chosen one for you on this earth plane to do this work with. And I'm not saying just because God has put these pairings together and they were created through the harmonic resonance of their essence. So what it appears to be, as I've often shared, like in the physical, oh, there's not a quick and easy fix and match, so it doesn't feel like it goes together like this from the outside. But when they're open at the core, they go together perfectly, because the essence is a match. And that's why most people fail to see the truth, because they're trying to, we're all programmed to go towards the path of least resistance, find the easy thing, find the easy solution, find the quick solution. And that's not why we're here. Remember, we are here to heal our lineage all the way back to the stars, all the way back to the first realm. Everything that has fallen will eventually have to be restored back into love. The freedom to feel that love cannot be created by anyone else but you, none other than you. And when people search for answers elsewhere and not there, which is the easiest, the fastest shortcut to the acceleration of ascension, which I was shown quite a while ago, that the main objective is, yes, for each and every one of us to accelerate ourselves, to elevate ourselves to a specific point, but a specific point of acceleration that's almost instant, like an instant plugging. And I've shared this in the past video, right? How when these two beings who are assigned, they were ascribed by none other than God to come together in this way, they can have an instant plugging back to source, and all the memory codes and everything starts pouring through. But people think, then why is this not happening? Because you still have so much shackles, you still have limitation beliefs, and you're holding yourself back, and you can't feel and experience this love because you're not fully surrendered to love as the life that is the mother. And yet the mother has gifted these unions to all who were meant to step on this path of ascension and even do the physical steps, because you might believe, well, our spirits don't need that, and if we're always with our spirit counterparts, right, then why is this needed anyway? Well, it's needed because God needs this. Because when this love, as I've shared before, right, when this love is intact, and when two can open up to the purity of that love, and I'm not talking about the new age twin beliefs, and there's people coming together at different levels, I do respect that, obviously, but I'm talking about these sacred unions that are focused around devotion and letting go and completely being surrendered into each other to feel what is the essence of union and to recreate that timeline here on earth. And that timeline is the spiral of the tantric union, that through this union literally two beings can elevate each other literally instantly. And the reason why you can't have this with anyone, and the way God chooses, is God doesn't choose the one who you would say, oh, they don't have patterns, like I've done most of my healing and they have. So no, God chooses through essence. The essence has to match, because the essence is the key to that love, that only the two can feel a specific quotient of that love. But what prevents them to have that experience of this love is all the blockages, self-denial, self-deprivation, and literally holding your inner child back. Because when you have that feeling and insight into someone, and you just know their heart loves your heart and your heart loves their heart, but it's the reason why it's difficult is never been because of this love, but it's because all the external obstacles that eventually each being, as they're refining and mastering themselves, they're going to have to see there is no such thing as an external obstacle. And that's the thing. There is no situation or something you have to literally monitor and take charge over or control. It's just going to lead to more control. You have to remember the simplicity. And the reason, Jesus Christ is the main master here, always tells us the simplicity is so obvious. And that's why darkness is thinking, haha, no one will ever discover it, because we're now programming this whole world into complexity. So no one will discover even the basic things and how simple they are. Remember, all masters, when they begin to teach, they teach simplicity. They teach simple facts of life as facts. So for you to know that specific things about life are facts, you don't need to strategize and control them. It means that you're slowly getting into the establishment of inner harmonic resonance and inner union. Therefore, right, you are becoming this magnetic pulsar in a way that just instantly showers that whatever epiphany or awareness you have to your own inner union and cosmic orgasm release, which is especially the path that I'll explain a little more towards the end, of the sacred feminine, who by opening her womb orgasmically and tantrically, she calls the masculine through the purification, and the masculine has to go through many rings of fire to purify. And now the path has been chosen that the feminines first come into their Christ and their Christ mastery. But like many people say, oh, the two can only be together when they're both fully healed and fully sovereign and fully in resonance and all of that. That's a myth. That will never be like this, because the key, the way God designed this union now, for the most challenging aspects, which is the Christ path, right? This has been the most hijacked timeline. Remember that we're not talking about beings who are just in partnerships and seeking to come together with another person. We're talking about beings who have codes of Holy Grail and mastery that the darkness has been working eons within them to kind of suppress them. They wouldn't even know themselves as the answer of that Holy Grail, of that union. They would just keep on searching everywhere. Some of them even travel the world. And at the end, the key was the beloved. The key was that union. The key was that being that opens up their heart almost instantly. But because of all the wounding and the shackleness, they close it almost instantly as well, until they walk the path. But the thing is, the way I've seen God designing this journey, or the mother shaping this reality in this journey, is that the feminine first awakens and arises within her Christ. And with that love, that devotional union, in that love, she helps to awaken the masculine. She helps to hold the space for the masculine. And she helps them to see that in truth, all the fear is an illusion, everything an inception, and the only thing that truly is love. It's in all the movies. Remember the movie Fifth Element? The same story, watch the ending. Is when they come into coupling in the love, they burst out a powerful beam, a ray, that just instantly saves them from, again, another catastrophe. And these are not just stories and myths, because darkness tries to show us these as, oh, it's just a movie, right? It's all sci-fi. No, it's not. Anything that you believe, it's so surreal, it's so beautiful, it doesn't exist. You've been programmed not to believe in it. That's the catch, right? Remember, again, like the greatest trick the devil ever played is to convince you she doesn't exist. Well, they do. And so for us to remember that this love is there, and just because sometimes between the two, when it's mirrored and it's reflected, it can be intense, because the only reason why it's intense is because you're suppressing your emotional side, emotional nature, and you're suppressing your inner child, and you're not allowing your child to freely love and freely express that love. And why this is so is because this goes all the way back into the childhood. I'm not going to talk about past lives here and all the inceptions, work through time. But let's say every life you start again. Every life you get a chance to start from scratch. So you're born like a beautiful baby, and you start being a small child, a mini toddler, right? Just about to explore the world. And even Osho explains this in his books, for example, how the first programming is always that everything is a no. No this, no that, no that, no, right? So people who have, like as children, very difficult parents or controlling environments in which they can grow and flourish, they already receive impulses that it's not safe to just express themselves. What's the first form of love? Expressing it, right? The way you want to, the way you want to speak, the way you want to sing, the way you want to dance, the way you want to move your body. And it's sometimes, parents dictating to you what sport you will play, what you will do, what you can do, what's too, for a masculine, that's too feminizing, or, vice versa. And now the reason why we have so many people turning into same-sex gender relationships is because there's so much wounding at the core level. And I'm not judging anything, but I'm saying there is no greater union as the way God made it, and it's the polarity through gender. Because as you know, everything is divine. Even our organs dictate that, right? How it's supposed to be. It's how humans achieve true union through ecstatic tantric bliss. And through that bliss, you annihilate any sense of darkness. But the path is through the tantric embrace, tantric release, and tantric ascension or elevation. But the problem is why so many don't see that as the key is they were indoctrinated into these 3D environments, relationships, situations. Because already as a child, they were told this is all you can get, this is all you can get. And there's always this being self-conscious instead of self-confident. And for example, I'll tell you my story. Like, we each get a dose of programming. Like, my programming was very mild in comparison to other people. And what I've experienced in my sessions with others as I was assisting them along their own ascension program, their own ascension map, is I really had a mild programming because my parents, they were not perfect at that point, you know. My mother is only now a true living master, but back then she was also just a human, remembering who she was, you know, making mistakes. And the thing is, even though they were not perfect, right, we each have like a specific amount of wounding because of that, but they never controlled me. I remember I was always allowed to go outside. We even had this old falling apart weekend house in a different region, and we went there often, and they just let me go. And I sometimes would stroll along and I would just get lost in the forest, and they had bears there and everything, and I just went. They never questioned me because I was always so naturally protected. And I guess my mother always being so intuitive, even back then, even with not being fully herself yet. She was still a shadow of her true self back then, but they always allow me. They never control me. I mean, sometimes, you know, things would be said here and there. No one is perfect as a parent and until they truly elevate, right? And then we know what conscious parenting is and passing on the gift of union. But the thing is, I was always allowed to roam around, and I was actually walking this hill today. I really had a desire to move, and I was contemplating on this today, why I'm also, not just because of my spirit, but also as a human, why I'm so always determined and outgoing and adventurous in spirit. And I always go towards when no man's land and no man's foot would ever step. And I created these situations in my life that were sometimes even a little dangerous in nature. I like slept outdoors with the foxes and all these things. They're all in my older videos. You know, like I slept only in my sleeping bag somewhere in the mountain valley, way up high. I wanted to go there because, oh, it was so beautiful. The moon will be full and it will be so romantic. Heck yeah, it wasn't romantic. Foxes were like, and they're swarming all around me. And I was so afraid. These primordial fears were triggered out of me. But in a way, growing through these fears, very primordial, almost like primitive fears, right? Like, what would an animal do to me? Being like literally as the one who walked through all of that and all my self-initiations through the mountains. Something crawling at me. It made me become who I am now. And the reason why I was like this is probably also because my parents, already when I was little, they let me stroll along. And I remember often I would ask my mom as an adult, well, you just let me play outside and you didn't monitor me. She was like, no, when you were a small child, I was always somewhere there around. You didn't see me and I paid attention until a specific age, right? But then I was a little older, and I was, let's say, a very young teenager, a little younger. And I just went there, and I remember one day I was really deep into the forest. And I went myself. I didn't go with my parents to, I don't know, pick mushrooms or something. I was just myself. And in a way, it was a pivotal imprint for me to receive that I'm always safe. And you see how many of these experiences as children we don't get, and how union begins with us as children, because the end of the union is when two beings, pure, crystallized as these beautiful cosmic babes, as these children within themselves, coming back to each other, but also coming back to each other, right? Not just to ourselves, but to one another. The chosen divine pairings, right? We were chosen for the union. But the reason why this is so difficult, because this whole lineage of distortion, especially the masculine side, and the feminines, I'll tell you, we don't have an easy work here. We're constantly, those who are in the sacred feminine path, we're cultivating through our womb the new waves of expansion and working around to find the ways through which the devil would not fully annihilate this through the influence of the fallen masculine, right? Which also you need to know that because when the masculine energy is not in its full integrity yet, right? It will be infiltrated by the reversal, right? The opposite, which is the fallen feminine energy. So usually they're going to be entrapped in these not illumined relationships. The relationships don't provide them the space to be themselves, to master themselves, to give them inkling, yeah, see, you're a master, you're guiding yourself, you're doing everything perfectly, you can't make a mistake. But us as the sacred feminine, sometimes we also have to say no and put boundaries, not because we don't have love for the counterpart, but because we have to. Because sometimes they also have to see that when they're in the fallen energy, they need to get a no. Because what's happening with a lot of masculines, and I experienced this, is when they go into this fear of doing something wrong, they don't want to face the feminine, so they rather hide, and they're going to be in their cave for years even. And the only thing they would need to face it, to confront it, and not just say, I'm sorry if I ever hurt you, but say, I'm sorry that I wasn't fully able to trust myself with you. And that forgiveness first comes from the self, from the core of the wound of the masculine. Everyone now wants forgiveness. But for me, it's easy. I forgive person like in the moment. It's not about that. It's to even be able to receive forgiveness. You can want forgiveness, but is your inner child allowing you to receive it? I see people so longing and craving for this forgiveness and union and camaraderie and harmony in relationships. But this wounding, that which creates a constant blockage and barrier, is when the masculine is so wounded, it's in hiding. There's still like eons of masculines going in a cave. And I just experienced a vision yesterday after a powerful orgasmic activation, cultivation, and release, which is also how my energy guides the masculine, pushes them forward. I saw a vision. They were in the cave, and they were then out of the cave just looking at the sea. There's this cave I always see, right? And they're hiding there, but they were looking at the sea, just looking with their beautiful eyes, looking at the sea. And I just sat down there to join them, and I'm looking at the sea. We're both looking at the sea together, the sea as the womb of the mother, that primordial consciousness. And we're looking at that peaceful, serene image of the sea. And then eventually we're seated next to each other, and they, as the masculines, start telling me things about themselves, like why are they like this now, from the perspective of what they're going through. And eventually they just stand up and say, now I have to go back to my cave. And I'm looking at them, I'm like, really? And they said, yes, because I have to go through the stage. I need to go sit back in my cave, and that was it. And it was really interesting because it also gave me a perspective like of the entire journey and processing, like the feminine holding the space. And it's not easy. People think, well, it's the easiest to hold the space. No, it's not. Because what is the most challenging part now for the feminine is to witness the masculine going through such turmoil that eventually, they really don't have to, because most of them still have influences of the devil, of this dark spells, of the dark magic, everything telling them they're not good enough, they're never going to make the right choice, and if they do, they're going to fail completely. And so they end up harboring so many emotions, because if they ever do get to release them, it's going to be too much all at once. And the key is for the masculine to own their shadow, what we call the inner demons, and stop avoiding them and being that avoidant type of personality that doesn't really clear anything, and just start the next step to trusting themselves and trusting this journey and trusting the feminine, to know that this is the path, because otherwise they would not be feeling all these feelings. They wouldn't, they're trying to rationalize and be strategic. In the end, like, remember again Star Wars, like my beautiful friend said today, in the end, no strategy helped them. Love helped them. And that's the beautiful part of God, that the key to God is instant. When you remember, this love, it's beyond anything. So even with all the ascension things that I give you as reference points to knowing the truth and knowing the database of what's happening in dark versus the light, that's important. But there is nothing more important than that which comes is even beyond that knowing, and that's the beloved union. The beloved union tops everything, and that's the reason why God is so powerfully reinforcing us to go there, is because in that instant you don't skip steps or you bypass, but you accelerate so fast with that union that certain things you don't have to experience. And that's what darkness tries to do. It tries to invade in our unions, and especially the masculine who's not like in their full blossom or full blooming yet. They're trying to tell them that, you need to go through all these hardships, and then you're going to be worthy of the feminine, and then you're going to get your holy grail, and even then maybe through I don't know how many lifetimes left. That's the trick. That's the catch. Go back to the source. What is the true gift of the mother? That there is always life. Life is eternal. The moment you remember yourself as the life, you can revitalize, you can replenish, and you can be yourself in an instant. You don't need to have that winding road And we're always shown this, we're programmed with this in every movie. The hero has to go through, I don't know, almost dying at the end. Like, why would you need to almost die in your body at the end, be an old person on your deathbed and saying, oh, now I see it all, poof, and then you die. And you've lost all the opportunity to ever feel the sweetness of union, the beautiful ecstasy of that love, when you fully surrender to your true ownership of yourself and that path which was chosen for you by God. But you have to, of course, choose it yourself. And you have to let your inner child choose. It's like you have to ask your child, like, who do I really love? How do I love? And how do I want to reciprocate and demonstrate or show that love in return, and not just be always stuck. And that's the biggest lie that was ever told. We need to be perfect and only then we can come together. And that's like the journey of infinite healing, which is never going to be complete. You're never going to be your whole self. You're going to have to need lifetimes and lifetimes to ever surpass that. That's the biggest lie, my dears. And that's the reason why Spirit set me down here today, make this video for all of us. Is that the union is not a shortcut and per se, like, oh, now I'm skipping steps. No, but it's an instant acceleration. If only you remember that love and be open to it and surrender to it, everything else will follow. And because the masculines are now, generally speaking, not just my own example, at the step in which they, they really need to confront themselves and be able to, whatever they do, whatever they did, confront the feminine, because the feminine, who truly is their chosen counterpart, will never ever judge them or blame them. She might be mad and upset at times, when they don't show up and they're being faulty or avoidant or mischievous in a way that's, it's just tricky, it's being in a delusion, and then you're literally playing tricks, and tricks of the mind playing on you, and then you're playing the tricks. But that whole deception, the instant when you just face yourself and say, ooh, yeah, I can't be like that, I can't fall into this energy, that's okay, because I'm human now and I'm making these mistakes, and that's okay, because through them I'm reliving the aspects of my childhood and what I was told I can and what I can't do. And I'm liberating all these aspects as I go. But without the mirror, that's the problem. Without the mirrors, you can't get there. And people say, well, everyone now has to go and do their own work. And, in the beloved Illumined Union, that's not the case. It's not always easy, right? But when you're together and when you're triggered and when you are chosen to elevate yourselves to each other, that's that acceleration. And that's what God wants. And sometimes it's not easy. You would rather choose, we already know how it is harmonious when we're alone. Those of us who reach inner completeness and wholeness and we're already self-realized, we know. We don't necessarily need someone. Like a feminine who's self-realized, she doesn't need a man. But God needs this union, because that's the way life is designed. That's the way illumined life functions. That's organic ascension we've been talking about, not mental ascension, which are all alone and you're all separated and there's no one but you, and there's all the universe is just like copies of you, and these teachings, like it's all one and it's just all reflections of you, but it's always just back to you. And there's no creation in singularity, my dears. When you know Divine Trinity the way God creates, there's no creation in singularity. So in your separation, in your separateness from your counterpart, you're not really going to achieve much. And you might have that, wandering hermit and always alone, and it's not what God envisions. So masculine's eyes at this point, they need to awaken to the inner eye. They need to shift towards the inner seership. They need to see where the devil still plays tricks on them and trying to make them believe that, they're never going to be good enough. And if they choose their true happiness and their true bliss, they're always going to fail. And, it's kind of like that safe feeling, like, why would I take the risk if, I will fail anyway? So you rather stay somewhere that it's safe. That's the problem. And this is how devil gets people each and every time. And if you're not masterful and you're not sitting with yourself, owning the shit, owning the baggage, owning the illusions that have been fed into you since you were a beautiful, innocent, small child. That's why I feel it's crucial for the masculines to start returning to relive specific aspects of their childhood, because when you're starting to search for answers in the mind and you think in a specific content and what someone has to share with you, that's going to be the key to your salvation. No, it won't be. Maybe you're going to hear a word that sparks something off, and maybe you go to a psychic and they give you the next bit of information, but it's not the key to your union and healing it fully. And it's not going to be a twin coach or someone like that. It's not even going to be me, but I shared the truth about the unions. But everyone in their own uniqueness will have to find their own ascension map and then find their union map through God. And so the reason why prayer is so important, and instead of going into the mental looping and trying to find information and resources through informational pathway, go to God, pray. Because I've had people also, not just in my own example, but I've had people telling me they were just before a breakthrough and they didn't know what to do, and they were getting voices, right? The whispers and all of that. But eventually they just surrendered everything and started praying, and God gave them the solution. Like just recently someone shared to me, they didn't know whether someone will get their email or a letter they wrote or not. So I just said to them, you have to do everything. You just have to like pour all of your love there, because love opens up the gates. And the person surrendered fully and prayed to God, and the other person who was meant to receive that received it. That's how powerful it is when you go to God, instead of going to this horizontal world. But people just basically create stories of their own life. That their life experience has nothing to do with you, by the way. It's theirs. And we're all here to share. We all have something to say. But those of you who really want to master yourself, not just through knowledge, but through love, you will have to start opening up to this love and trusting it again. Because everyone, we're so indoctrinated and programmed in this life, especially the masculines, to not trust this love. No, that's not the key. Go back. Feed yourself some more information. Feed yourself some more junk. Which made the masculine very bitter, cynical even at times, and very closed off, which is very sad, because at the core of the masculine is nothing but humility and devotion, and to serve the divine feminine, and they serving each other, and through serving each other through devotion, they're serving God. And God knows what can happen, but I've seen visions and images. If that reality in my own life was to unfold, it was freaking beautiful. And that's what God showed me. Look, this is on the other side. But unfortunately, right, because these unions are related with two beings meeting, coming together, merging as one, we also do need the free will of the other. We need their acknowledgement. So if one acknowledges the union and the other doesn't, it's a tricky thing. It also makes the one who's in acknowledgement want to run away, because it's too hard for them to be the only one there. Imagine how it is to keep holding a door open and never, the guest that you're waiting never arrives. It's freaking excruciatingly painful at times. But the way I've mastered myself is heal my inner child wounds and desires and expectations, and just really surrendered everything to God now. And it's now a state of love that's really benevolent, pure, and neutral. Doesn't mean it doesn't have, love can never fully be truly just neutral. Like, love will always have a powerful charge to it. But when you learn to create that charge without any addictions, attachments, your codependencies, that fire within you will burn like wildfire, and it will create that union. Remember, the feminine is the one creating or birthing it. And I'm going to go deeper into my own experience and what were some of the revelations on Patreon. I'm going to work on my content this week. But I really wanted to sit here with you to tell you that in the end, above it all, beyond it all, the top notch of everything, the main key, the core of everything is beloved divine union. And why God, with all of divine illumined beings and all the helpers and all the angelic kingdoms and realms, they're now all working for this. Remember, already a few months ago, I shared that the insight came to us that they're now only working on union. That's the next step. And I'm not saying on earth is easy, but they can't be the only ones, right? The higher realms need the cooperation of that which is here, the ones who are here seated. And eventually everyone will have to go through their fears. And remember that only love is real. There's so many people who, even it's not, like, let's say per se, this highest devotional union, but they've come in a specific partnership that's very beautiful and harmonious, and they have messages to share there, and they have wisdom to share there. And you might think, well, it doesn't work for me because my path is too difficult, and maybe I never chosen that. But your heart knows it has chosen that, because otherwise, remember the sacred writing and the teachings of the red book, the Libro Rosso by Sarah, Jesus' daughter, apparently. It says there that when God puts a desire in your heart, that desire is God's. It's never wrong, it's never faulty, and it comes through your feeling. It doesn't come through your logical brain and thinking and processing, which is literally the reptilian brain that we're more and more dissolving. And the more, as I've shared in the previous videos, you claim your DNA as God's DNA, sovereign DNA, the less the reptilian brain will have any effect on you. It's just going to be like a bypass for his mind. Well, you're going to be so anchored into the heart, the rose of the Christ, this Christos path, the purity, devotion, and immaculate conception, in a way, of that union, of the two coming together, merging and becoming the Trinity of life. They don't need any knowledge to do that. Every body has already been seeded fully with that seed of the union. They don't need to, oh, what will I do if this is all the mind, beloveds. This is all projection. The bodies have everything. The reason why you feel they don't is because the bodies have been controlled. Our bodies have been controlled for such a long time, not just by our lineage, our parents, our environment, the indoctrination, the school systems. You know, we go through many of them. Kindergarten, main school, right? Or middle school, high school, college, even higher degrees. It's all just levels of programming. Each time you're being more filtered and less of your true self. So people, for example, who've been in corporate positions and jobs for years, they've been filtrated. Doesn't mean that they've fallen. That spark, that child is always there, never left. But it just means you're going to have to pierce a little harder to get thrown to the other side, where the core of the truth of your love awaits. And things that are happening in your life would not be happening if that was not your choice as well. But the last bits and pieces of the path will have to be navigated by each being in that union. My family always gives me the same percentage. The 80% of that is destined. The 20% is self-willed and created, which is literally the freedom we need for our unions to be created in this way, also in the human realm. And remember, they always say the same thing. What happens in this realm determines the next. And it's not just for informational input, but it's also for us to be aware that this union, the beloved union, and the chosen counterparts here on earth, that's the key. That's the key, the next key to life and our next steps. Because when we embrace that path, a new realm will open, I said. A new realm will open for each and every one of those counterparts coming together. It's like a whole new realm. The things you now see from each individual being separate and having their own separate way towards their own acknowledgement of the self and self-realization, it would open up the third energy that each on their own can't achieve or access. But in that togetherness, in the tantric union coupling, just totally surrender to this love and God, the new realm, the new path will open up, a new creation cycle. So that's how much I can share. The rest I will talk about in the Patreon transmission for the Mastery and Mystery of Love. I'll see you next time. I'm just going to focus more on other things now. But you're welcome to join my Telegram page, which I'm going to use, as always, mini reading snippets and try to do, as you know, June is my favorite month of the year. Yeah. Beautiful meadows and flowers. So I'm going to try to do little mini video montages from beautiful places I might visit. And until we meet again, as always, so much love is in power. And I'll talk to you next time. With so much beloved love in my heart. And may touch you in every single way possible that is needed for the outcome, the highest outcome of our Illumined Union as one. Thank you.